All right, welcome back to the DET 842 podcast. My name is Kid Okada. Today I'll be leading the stream. We have Captain Vodo here. Man, would you like to introduce yourself to the detachment?
Yeah, my name's Alexis Vodo. I graduated here in December of 2014. Proud member of DET 842. Spent my 4.5 years as a cadet and then went off into Big Blue shortly thereafter as a force support officer.
Active duty now?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I love it.
Well, we're all looking forward to.
Hang in there. It's worth
Almost
the wait,
there.
I promise.
I think the senior class right now has around 70 days left till their commission.
Oh my goodness.
So it's coming up really quick.
Yeah,
Super
that must be
for them.
super exciting
Right.
for everybody out there.
Yep. We're getting there
Yeah.
slowly but surely. So the first question we have for you was, what was your favorite part about being a cadet at DET 842?
Bottom line, I think the community. I still keep in contact with a lot of people that I
Mhm.
graduated with or graduated a little before me. And, I think that this detachment as a whole did a really good job kind of giving me a foundational social network. So
Mhm.
that way I could keep in contact with people that I'm going through this rough patch.
Right.
Help, SOS, I need help. And having people that, we went through the same struggles. We were a very close group of people. So, I know my best friend, Tia, she's a maintenance officer now, but Tia Robles, she's out doing amazing things in Big Blue right now.
Sweet.
And she's my sister from another mister. Like,
Right.
we are attached at the hip. The running joke in our detachment was we were inseparable. Like, whatever she was doing, I was doing, and vice versa. So I still connect and keep in contact with her. And it's like, not a day has changed.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen her in over 2 years, but we still keep in comms. And had it not been for DET 842, I wouldn't have that lifelong friend.
Right, because you met her here
'Cause I met
as
her
a
here.
cadet.
Mhm.
So it's one of those relationships where it's like you see her again and it's like not a day was missed in between.
Not a day was missed.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that was the best part about
Yeah.
it. And it's not just her. I think about, I was in Arnold Air Society
Mhm.
too. We had some cadre, Jen Suarez, who's my Air Force mom,
Mhm.
as I call her. But still remain in contact with her. I still remain in contact with my little. I don't know if y'all do the Big Little
We do. We
program.
still do. Yep.
So my little Matt Smith, him and I went to his wedding. I was one of his
Awesome.
groomswomen, I
Right,
guess. But yeah, and his wife Liza, like, we're all still.
That's
like,
awesome.
Despite him being in Japan, me being here in Texas, and Tia being in Louisiana,
Mhm.
like, we all still. keep
Still
in
a
con-
family.
Still family. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Know
that's
each
awesome.
other, yeah.
I think it definitely mirrored. What years were you here?
2010 through 2014.
Okay, so yeah, definitely there's some connections I want to make. I think it mirrors like my experience with ROTC. I graduated from Randolph High School, so just 30 minutes down the road. But with one of my best friends, Cadet Estrada right now, same thing, attached at the hip. He's Cadet Estrada, I'm Cadet Okada. Cadre calls us Oak Strada type thing, so like inseparable almost, same thing. And ROTC really brought us that much closer together because we're from the same high school. We were pretty close from there, and then here we're going through the same things like you talked about. We're both math majors, just like you were, and so it's that same thing. But also, you said 2010 to 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned Colonel Suarez, right?
Mhm.
So okay, when I moved here to Texas in 2012 because my stepdad was working ROTC detachments,
Okay.
and so he was stationed here to work the detachment at UTSA. So I think it was his Master Sergeant Colburn. Do you remember
Yeah, I
him?
do.
You do? Okay,
I
yeah.
do.
So that's my stepdad.
Are you serious?
Yes, ma'am.
What?
So
That is like
Right, that's the connection.
a small world. Like,
Yeah.
the Air Force is a small world.
Right.
Like, prime example. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah. So when we first got here, I was like running around the detachment as a little 12-year-old, like not really knowing what's going
If
on.
I saw you,
I feel like it might have been possible.
I would have lost. This is weird. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, I let
it's
you
it's a
take-
weird connection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and my first friends that I made here in Texas were Colonel Suarez's kids because her
Joshua,
daughter,
Jonah, and
right?
Jayla, yeah.
Her daughter and her sons they're all at Randolph.
Yeah.
And so like those
That
are
makes my heart so happy.
right. And
Oh,
now
my
they're
goodness.
both up. Both my stepdad and Colonel Suarez are both at the region.
Yeah.
So they're still kind of in this area. Same thing with Major Beinhauer's up there. I don't know if you were here when he was there. I think he
No.
might have came in after,
Yeah.
but yeah. So a bunch of the DET 842 like alum, if you
Yeah.
will, or the family is like up at the region. And we actually just emailed them to get some of them their faces on the podcast as well. So they'll be a few weeks down the road. They'll be in the same seat you're in right now.
A small world. Like,
Right.
I'm still like dumbfounded
Yeah.
that you were. I feel old. Like, I wish
Yeah.
you wouldn't have said your age. I'm like, like those memes that you see, like 30 is like, it's like, you know, millennials having a good time, and then 30 like totally like distracts
Right, like
them
it's
from
just
it. That's how I feel right now. Where it's like, oh, this is fun. When I was 12.
Right.
Oh,
My fault.
oh, no. I'm teasing you, but that's. I hope this is an awesome opportunity.
Yeah,
for,
so I think it's really cool.
Yeah, but Jen, you know, Colonel Suarez
Mhm.
and her kiddos, like such a big part of my life right now, and it's such a blessing because when you're in the Air Force, you go all over the place, and
Mhm.
you know, you get separated from your family, you know, you get separated from your childhood friends, even your ROTC friends, and then you're kind of forced into a situation where you have to kind of reestablish a network, right?
Right.
You have to create a new friend group so that way you nurture that social
Mhm.
pillar that we talk about,
Right.
right? You know, but having family scattered across the states, you make families everywhere you go.
Right.
I've got my Mississippi family, I've got my Maryland family, and then I've got my Texas family.
Mhm.
And you know, Jen and Tia and you know Matt, I would consider them like my family, but they're in different pockets.
Right.
And I'm just lucky that Jen's here in Texas because I can
Mhm.
drive up the street and you know hang
You'll
out
see
with
her,
her,
yeah.
see her, you know, have that outlet, that mom figure that I need a sanity check.
Right.
You're about to
She's
get
right
your,
there.
You're about to get your sanity check.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what. So, but
Yeah, she's definitely like that.
But had it not been for like, I know it sounds super cheesy, but that I got that from here.
Yeah.
Like sitting in this very
In this classroom, right?
right there with
Mhm.
Tia sitting next to me, a couple other awesome colleagues. Like it started here, and
Right.
you know, I don't think. You know, right now when you're going through the motions, you don't really think long term.
Right, the focus gets kind of blurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go through your Air Force career, and you reminisce on a
Mhm.
lot of those experiences. And then when you get opportunities like this to go back and contribute again, it's like, wow, like the tests were terrible. You know, I don't remember the details.
Mhm.
You know, the course details. I can remember like really big cliff notes of it, but the people and the people of whom I've interacted with and the relationships that I've built here, learning together, it's followed me to this day. And you know, for me, that's the best thing that you know, everything else aside, like that in particular, the community and the friendships and the relationships that I built here have followed me to now. And they will continue to follow me
Mhm.
throughout my career. Celebrate the successes and celebrate the failing forward, as I say. Like
Right.
celebrate when the times where you fail forward and having people to bounce off. Like, you know, dude, I messed up. Like, how did you have something like this? And nah, man, that's a unique that's a unique face plant. But you know, just dust yourself off.
Right.
Talk to this person, or you know, take care of yourself. I'm here for you. So
It's good to have those connections. And,
absolutely.
And it's even more awesome that, one, it comes full circle, right?
Oh yeah.
From you being a cadet to seeing maybe a 12-year-old Cadet Okada running around
Stop.
before Cadet Okada.
Stop.
And then now
Well,
you
just say
now
Cadet
you're back
Okada running around
right.
a couple of years ago.
Right.
Stop.
But to think it all started here and followed you to this day and will continue, like you said, to follow you for the
Yeah.
rest of your life is pretty awesome. I think the next thing though that we were wondering was what was the most challenging part about being a cadet here at the detachment?
Balance, right?
Mhm.
Like I think because you have a lot of different, like everybody has their own path that they're walking. You know, my situation, I was working 3 jobs. You know, it's funny. I worked one of my best friends, John. He used to work at the Starbucks here on campus. He was my
Mhm.
boss, so I used to work with him at Starbucks. I worked at the JPL Starbucks during finals.
Uh-huh.
I worked at the UCC Starbucks. I bounced between the two, and it was a good time. Like it really helped me. Like I remember there were mornings on Thursdays we'd wake up at 5 or 6 for PT.
Mhm.
I'd go do that. I'd go to class. I'd go to lead lab, and then after lead lab, I'd take my uniform off. I'd put my Starbucks stuff on, and I'd go
Go to
work
work.
the closing shift.
Oh man.
So like finding that balance, I'll be the first to say that's, you know, to this day, that's one of my biggest weaknesses, especially when you've got a lot of responsibilities levied on you, is balancing for me now having a husband,
Mhm.
my home life and my professional life. And now that, you know, with COVID conditions, everything's kind of at home now.
Mhm.
How do you separate work from playtime? You
Right,
know what I
the
mean?
boundaries in between when it's like forced on you to stay there.
Yeah, so looking back at my experiences as a cadet in this very hall, right? Like, I think for me, the biggest challenge that I had was balancing my responsibilities. And I think I put self-care at the bottom of the totem pole because I had a lot of things
Right.
piled up, like, you know, ROTC responsibilities, treasurer of the Arnold Air Society, jobs within the detachment itself, my work to make a living and get some food on my table, pay rent, and then other family and stuff like that. You rack and stack a lot of it, and I think for me as a cadet, the hardest thing for me was learning to make sure that self-care doesn't fall all the way to the bottom of that totem pole, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't do everything else. That's like I had to learn very quick to take that and stack it on top. Take care of yourself, and everything else will kind of fall in line. But I think you get too wrapped up in school, you get too wrapped up in debt responsibilities, and you have to get things done, do it 110%, no failure, we don't fail, and you lose track of how to take care of yourself. You think, oh, I'm doing really good, that's taking care of, I'm taking care of myself, I'm doing really well, I'm making perfect things, and it's like, are you though? Like, you got bags under your eyes, your hair's kind of in a fray, like your eyes are bloodshot. How much coffee have you had today? Don't ask that question.
Right.
Like, I don't have time. But I think the hardest part for me was learning to balance that. And I don't know if this is a right platform to do it, but any advice, like if I could give anything, is breathe, self-care, take care of your school, take care of all your responsibilities, but first and foremost, you gotta take care of the soul, man. You gotta take care of you, because if you break yourself down, it's only a matter of time before you cap out and you just shut down and you can't do anything, because your body is basically saying, dude, we're done.
Yeah.
No more.
You met your limit.
I've hit the threshold. Anything beyond this point, you're going night-night. We're gonna take a stress nap. We're taking a stress nap now. So
for sure. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of us cadets can relate to. That's something that I had recently too, and I think I wish I would have learned that earlier in the program, was the whole self-care thing. We talk about it a lot, right? Like, you have to take care of yourself and make sure that's good, and things will follow, but you don't really learn it until you go through it and you're like, okay, now I understand, like I really do need to take care of myself. Like, I can't just get up there or like sit in the auditorium, right, the Lead Lab auditorium, listen to a briefing about like take care of yourself and then take care of your responsibilities, and things will fall into place. It's once you're living it, and then you realize, like, okay, like I fell, now I need to get back up and approach it a different way. So that's something that's really, really cool. I'm glad you brought that up, and the advice and everything.
I think you bring up a good point too. Like, you can get 1,000 briefings, PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint, right? And the resources that are on those PowerPoints are great, don't get me wrong, but it's you have to experience it to really codify that information, you know what I mean? You have to, and I'm not saying, break yourself to learn the lesson, like that's not what I mean at all. But I think you bring up a really good point. Like, we hear about it, we hear these concepts, self-care and, taking care of your social pillar, your fitness pillar, and all the different pillars thereof. And you're like, okay, mandatory briefing, I get it. But, taking the time to sit down and think about, even afterwards, like if you're sitting there and you're just like, taking 5 minutes or so, that's not much in the real term, taking 5 minutes to kind of look reflectively on it. Cool, it was a mandatory briefing, but what did I take from it?
Right.
How can I relate that to my life? How can I relate that to what I'm doing now?
Put it into practice too.
I'll tell you, even in situations where we get, in the on the other side of the fence, when you're active duty, we still go through PowerPoint presentations on, be it sexual assault things, or
suicide awareness.
Oh, absolutely, suicide awareness, stress, mental health, things like that. Resources, the briefings on resources that we have active duty, and a lot of people are like, okay, but it's like, take the time. What resources are available to us? We have clinics, we have Airmen and Family Readiness Centers that are there to help you and your families find resources for the things that you and your family need. Finding times to connect the dots, and for yourself, but not only for yourself, but for the airmen that are going to be underneath you. If you've got, Airman Snuffy, who is going through a divorce and has 2 kids under their belt, what resource, and you notice that their work is starting to let up, and you're the officer, right? Like, you're the boss in charge, and your NCO is like, hey, my airman's going through some stuff. I've done everything in my avenues. Do you have anything? So thinking beyond the scope of your own nose on, cool, this information is useful for me in these aspects, but where could it be applied to others down the line?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, learning that learning that balance of self-care, and then I would even say for the presentations that you receive, thinking beyond the scope of, okay, cool, this is good for information for me now, but where could it be applied later on?
Right, the
down
big
line?
picture stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Start thinking beyond big picture.
Mhm.
Like you gotta think big picture on how far will the ripples go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah.
Sweet. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our next topic, there's a personal question that I wanted to ask, like, that still relates to this.
So is it about when you were like 12 years old?
No,
walking around with
no,
that?
man, it's not. It's not.
All right, we're not
No.
gonna go like back.
We won't
in
go
time.
back.
All right, great.
But does it get easier? And I don't ask this like because obviously when you become active duty and you're an officer, like doing the day-to-day like real life stuff that we've been training for, it's like it's we hear that it's more challenging. But does the balance get easier? Because right now a lot of cadets have this mindset, and myself included. Sometimes it's like, okay, when you're a cadet, you have the same things you listed. You have maybe we have 2 or 3 full or part-time jobs. We've got school, like the upper level classes, or even just the regular like freshman, sophomore level classes too. You've got all of your ROTC responsibilities, which only stack if you're involved in clubs like Arnold Air, Booster Club, or Honor Guard and stuff like that. But when you enter active duty, it seems as if like those things go away, and so you're just focused on your career and your job in the military. So is that like, are we right in thinking that, or?
I think there's release. I will say, because I felt it, right? 'Cause I graduated, and I see Avery Wilson. Oh, I see a couple other questions in the chat, which we can get to. I'll gladly
Right,
get to those. But
pull those up.
Let me tackle this. I think I felt a release. So after I commissioned, I commissioned in December. I didn't go active until September. So I had a long,
Wow, almost a year.
break. And the crazy thing at the time was, I didn't know when I was going to go active duty. Like I didn't find out
okay.
about going active duty
Right.
until like I want to say it was August. It's like, hey, your
Wow.
AD dropped. You're gonna go active duty, and
But that's a month before you actually.
Mhm.
Wow.
So that I found out a month before I went active duty. So I had this long period, and panic set in. It was like, OMG, what am I gonna do with my life
Mhm.
for the next? So I started looking at recruiters. So so I found my job, went and did my thing, and that's all I focused on. Just in school was gone, right? But when I went active duty, there was a release. It was like, wow, I'm a lieutenant. I'm a second lieutenant in the Air Force.
Mhm.
Like, I did it. I made it. My uniform was tip top shape. I was
Right.
clipping the cables. Like, I'm ready to rock and roll and do this. And I feel that you'll feel a release, like the tension, the anxiety of, am I going to commission?
Mhm.
Is this going to work out? When do I get to wear my uniform? When you don the uniform for the first time, it's like, yeah.
You feel it.
You feel it, but I will say it doesn't get easier.
Okay.
Because you are going, depending on what career field you go into, because each and every officer is different.
Right.
Every career field has a different lens to it, right? And depending on what you do, like you could very well go be a 17 Delta or 17X and be in tech school for 6 months to a year and not have any airmen under you. Or you could be a force support officer and go to tech school for less than 5 months and then have anywhere between 25 to 50 airmen underneath you.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But
Right.
it doesn't get easier. I think you're going to feel a release, like the tension from school and the anxiety that builds up about, am I going to commission? Is this crazy ride going to work out after all? You feel that release, but in place of it, a different kind of tension is there, and it's not so much of if, it's what. What can I do to be a good officer?
That makes sense.
What can I learn today?
Mhm.
Because LT's, I'll never forget my chief, learning time. That's what LT stands for.
I like that.
So what can I learn about leadership? What can I learn about my airmen? What do they do? How do they do it? Where do I fit in on the bigger picture? And how can I be plugged in without taking the limelight from them? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And letting them grow in their job, and enabling them, empowering them. You know what I mean? And where do I fit in on that? And I think that that's where you should anticipate that it doesn't get easier, but I feel that the stress it's a different
It's
flavor
different.
of stress. Yeah,
Okay.
it's manageable. It doesn't feel like doom and gloom. You know what I mean? Where it's
Right.
just like, this is what I want. This is
Mhm.
where I want to be. Like, it's like, cool, I made it. However, how do I succeed? How do I take care of my airmen?
Right.
Because your success is predicated on, what you do for the people underneath you. And I'll be the first to say that I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for my NCOs, my airmen, the people that have pulled me aside in offices and shut the door and been like, ma'am, let's talk. Learning time.
Real
like,
talk, yeah.
Real talk. Like, you need to, this is what I need you to do. This is what an officer is. And, this is what we need from you. And having those genuine conversations and stuff like that. And not taking it like, how dare you insult my,
Right.
how dare you
I'm the
insult my
lieutenant.
honor? I'm
Yeah.
the lieutenant here. Like, sit down. Like, that master sergeant has been in the Air Force for close to anywhere between 15 and 17 years.
Mhm.
Sit your butt down
Listen.
and listen to this person because they're going, like, Chief Moody, Heather Moody, she retired, but she was one of my first, like, big NCO influencers. I mean, I adopted her dog Coda from her daughter,
Oh, wow.
Emily. Yeah, like, we still have Coda, like, in our family. But she was one of the first people that came into my life and be like, I'm going to teach you what we do as an MPF. And what we're going to do in military personnel flight. So
Okay.
think like ID cards and
Right.
force management and career development and stuff. And now I'm going to teach you what we do, and you're going to do fine. I got your back. And same with like Sergeant Krista Knaus. Like she was another one of she's my MPF superintendent. Like she was like, you're going to learn, and it's going to be growing pains, but you're going to learn and you're going to do well. But so long as you're willing to receive it, right? So different stressors, different angles. How do I take care of my airmen and what can I learn? I think is going to be what that stress transitions
Right.
to.
So not easier, but different.
Very much so. Not easier, but I don't want to spook the crowd and be like, it's going to get harder.
Right.
Like it's not
Worth
it's not,
it though.
It's not like that at all.
Right.
Like it doesn't get easier, but in a way it's uniquely manageable. Like
Interesting.
you feel stimulated. Like you feel like, have you, as a math major, like when you started picking up calculus for the first time, you're like, dude, I'm getting this.
Yes.
This makes sense.
Yep.
The test is still hard, but I understand the methodologies and how to get there. It's the same mindset.
Okay.
Once you get the wheels rolling, like it's gonna be like, okay, cool. Monkey wrench, diverted. Like
Right.
I got this. Like it's way easier to juggle that aspect, in my opinion.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Really wanted to hear that. But yeah, like you said, we'll get to some of these questions.
Sure.
The first one: what's a day in the life of a force support officer?
I think that comes. We have an entire section dedicated to that. If I read that correctly, yeah.
Yes, we
Section
do.
3. So
Yeah, we can wait for that one.
J4738. I appreciate the question, but it looks like Cadet Okada has me in that, has a nice block to that, which I'll talk to. And then Avery Wilson, what do you feel I'm terrible at reading out loud. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Man.
I'm a math major it's tech brain. Bear with me. What do you feel you weren't prepared for in active duty after graduating commissioning that you think we should know now? Oh boy.
It's a packed question.
That is that's, we say a loaded question, right? But in a good sense. I think it's loaded with a lot of good, it prepares me to give some personal insight on that. So first, great question. For me, what do I think you should know that I wasn't prepared for when I commissioned? I feel that the biggest thing that you should brace yourselves for is being, it's going to sound super cheesy, right? But, they say flexibility is the key to air power.
All the time.
Remain flexible. We have expectations. You go in, when I go in, I'm like punctual. Like, I'm going to be there on this time, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to do this. And I think punctuality is great, and depending on the situation, but have your expectations high, but get a lay for how the land already is before you start stomping on other people's grounds and stuff. You know what I mean? Get a feel for the culture of the environment that you're going into, because I went in guns a-blazing. I want to learn. I'm ready to do this. Let's go. And my, Chief mood. He was like, you know, and Mike Fix, love him to death. But Mike Fix called me an unguided missile. Like you've got a lot of oomph, but we need to get fins on you so you don't like spiral out of control. So I think the best, that is where I wouldn't say failed, but it took me a minute to put a pump on my brakes because I was excited. I got a stable paycheck. I got airmen. I'm ready to go.
Right.
And I think the enthusiasm's great to have, but I feel that trying to jump in the deep end head first is, I would recommend get a lay for the land. Like think about what expectations that you have, and then how does it compare to what's already existent, and then what can you do to influence culture change without creating a rift or creating fires along the way. Like I've heard the saying, "May the bridges I burn light the way." That is exactly not. That's not
complete opposite.
That is the opposite of what you should do. I would say get a feel for what your community is like, what the culture of your work center is like, and then staying true to your expectations and stuff. Right? How can you influence change and get everyone's buy-in? You know what I mean? Or get the majority buy-in. Because some people are, I mean, that's just how...
Can't please everyone.
Can't please everybody. People are going to be resistant to it. But first and foremost, bouncing ideas off your NCOs. Hey, you know, notice we do this. You know, have you thought about doing this before? Or, you know, what can we do? What do you feel about this? And instead of like telling them, this is what I want, but trying to see if they can come up with ideas that match your expectations.
Right.
But it's their own way.
Like inspire them to do it instead of micromanage them.
Empower them.
Right.
Like, hey guys, I've noticed that we're slacking off in these areas, and it's you know, I'd like to get your buy-in on where you think that's coming from. Like, this is what I've seen. Am I wrong? Am I wearing am I just wearing the wrong kind of lens on the situation, and getting their buy-in? So that's what I feel. Cadet Wilson, that's what I feel. I wish I would have known before I commissioned and graduated was, you know, it's great to go in with a really strong enthusiasm and be ready to make your impact on the Air Force. But I think the biggest thing that I could advise, you know, you all going into your work center is learn the culture and then think about what your expectations are and how you can influence change in a positive manner without micromanaging and dictating these things.
Right.
And that's not to say there are some situations where it's going to require that, but I feel that as a lieutenant going into it, the biggest thing you should be doing is learning about where you're stationed and learning your airmen, especially. Be
a sponge.
Yeah, be a sponge. And I know that's another, because I remember
cliche.
It's another cliche thing, like be a sponge, bloom where you're planted. But that's literally, like, I cannot, like, it's true. Like, it sounds crazy, it's cliche, but it's so true. Like, it's because I was a skeptic too. Like, I was like, okay, bloom where you're planted. Okay, cool story. Thanks. Like, it's like, no, that's how you progress. You know, you're not gonna always get what you want out of the Air Force, and it's not that the Air Force doesn't care about you. It's just that's just how. That's
how this works.
That's how this works. Yeah. The Air Force needs you to do this and needs you here to do it. And you know, you literally can make the best or the worst out of a situation. Some people joke about Minot. I've never been, but like, I've heard people that have gone to Minot and were like, dude, the hunting out there is awesome. You know, I got an awesome Jeep. I went off-roading with it. Like, I had a blast. Other people have their own opinions, but you know, it's really what you make of your first experience. So keep your head high, go in with an open heart and open mind, and be ready to take on like all the different things that are going on, and think about what you want out of what you want in your organization and how you can influence that change in a positive way.
Right.
You know, so that's what I would say. I hope that long-winded and probably cyclical explanation answered your question. Yeah, sorry.
No, I ramble. I think that's good though, because it keeps us in the keeps you in your second lieutenant, first lieutenant years, right? And we can use that to transition into the second segment here, which we have is all about your first duty station, as you can see there. So off the bat, like this says, how did you feel about moving to your first duty station after the almost a year wait
to
EAD?
I was salty.
Really?
I remember, because I was like, Sergeant Tingle was my NCO, and he goes, assignments drop, you ready? I'm like, yeah, where are we going? Because when I filled out my 53, I was like, Yoko, because I took a couple Japanese classes here, so I was like, Yokota, Japan, Kadena, Japan, I'll put Lake Neath on there,
Right.
oh, Spangalam, that sounds fun, like all these overseas things, and I'm like half expecting, like, all right, like overseas, here I come,
Right.
I'm gonna, blow this popsicle stand and go and do my own thing and experience the world, and Sergeant Tingle pulls me in his office and he goes, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you're gonna go to Keesler Air Force Base." I was like,
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Sweet." I was like, "I know that's my tech school. Like, so where do I go after tech school?" And there was like an awkward pause, and I go, "What?" Like, I was like, "No, where do I go after tech school?"
Man.
And he goes, Keesler. So I went to Keesler and I got an apartment and I reported into my first, my squadron, and I went. Like 2 weeks later, so I got a feel for because I was in force management, so that's where they put me for my first like OIC tour, officer in charge. So I went there and did my thing, and then 2 weeks later, I went TDY. So we're like training like temporary duty thing.
Yeah.
I went TDY legitimately across the street to my tech schoolhouse.
Wow, because you're already stationed in Keesler.
Here. So while all these folks so I'm in my the basic force support officer course, and I was, and don't get me wrong, like I'll get to like how I fell in love with it, right? But I remember being in here and being like, what the heck? Like, no, that's not I didn't put that on my 53, right. And it was one of those like, yeah, but
Air Force needs you.
We need you over it. We need you over at Keesler. Bye-bye.
Man.
But I'll tell you right now, I loved my assignment at Keesler. Like, I had a blast, but getting there, I was like, well, at least I'm active duty and I'm getting an active duty paycheck. Like, I'm okay with this. And then, so I in processed. I hung out for 2 weeks learning things, and then went across the street to go to tech school. And we do like the round robin. Like, tell us a little about yourself. I'm
icebreakers.
I'm Lieutenant Jane Doe from Hawaii, and I'm working in the MPF too. Blah blah blah. We went around the room, and it was like I said towards the end because it was like a horseshoe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's at the end, and it got to me, and I was like, my maiden name is Poole, so I was like, I'm Lieutenant Poole. I'm here. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm stationed here. And they're like, do you get like the first question, do you get per diem? I'm like, no, I don't get I'm stationed here. No, I don't. They're like, oh man. But the funny thing is they went like to live in their like, they rented condos, or they had like the dorms here, right? And I'll be like, I'm gonna go to my apartment and like enjoy my bubble, my life. But as I went through the course, like I found, I'm a big nerd at heart, so I found comic book shops. I found that kind of community and stuff, and navigated it. I went to went and found a good CrossFit gym and stuff, and like I feel that I found like my niche. So as I kind of grew in Keesler, like I found that the experience itself, like learning to love it, was good, was fun. Like, because I had to get creative. Where am I gonna find what to do around here? So, again, another long-winded response to a very, very, very short question. But my initial feelings were, I was like,
salty.
Dang it, I was salty. I was bitter. But at the same time, when I got there, because you think like, oh man, I really want to go overseas. I'm going to it was in Biloxi, so Biloxi. Like, I was like, how do you even pronounce? Is it
Biloxi?
Biloxi? Like, what is this? And Sergeant Tingle was like, it's called Biloxi, and it's actually not bad. Like, and so it was a funny conversation. It was lighthearted, but I was like, oh man, all this Japanese, and I get stationed, and I wanted to get out of the South.
Right.
Like, I've been in the South my whole life, and they put me in good old Mississippi. But good. I would say people have mixed reviews about it, but it's a fun town, and the resilience that exists in that on Keesler itself. Because you got to think, back in 2005, Katrina hit and devastated the entire Gulf Coast. And if I'm not even lying to you. Like, you walk outside what's now the main gate, which is by railroad tracks, you can see the Gulf Coast. Like, it's right there. so you got to think like the base is on the Gulf Coast. If you look up on a map, it's right there. And so Katrina came through and devastated the entire like the community, the city of Gulfport and Biloxi. Like it completely like ruined a lot of the infrastructure that was there. But the resilience that came of it, the people that were there were people that I worked with that were in the FSS that
when it happened.
Wow. Like Mr. Mike Fix, he was there when it happened and had to help
restructure everything.
And to hear those stories and to see where Biloxi is now, like it's night and day. Like it's been what 20, like it's been a decade,
right.
Maybe closer to 2 now that we're in 2021, and it's been it's amazing. Like the resilience, the heartbeat that is Biloxi it's fun. It's a bunch of like it's a different southern country, a different southern culture, but I'll tell you what, they know southern hospitality and they don't joke around.
Oh, yeah?
I'll tell you, I miss the crawfish. I miss being able to go to New Orleans. So New Orleans was an hour and a half away. So my husband Joe and I, we would go out, and our favorite thing to do was to go during the day and walk around the French Quarter and see the art that folks try and sell,
eat the food. Like Bourbon Street has a reputation in and of itself, but there's such a beautiful culture of music and of art, like within that city, and it was only an hour and a half away from where we were stationed. So finding those outlets and finding those communities and that heartbeat really kind of helped set the pace for the assignment as a whole. You know what I mean? And it takes time to develop it. Like you gotta do a little bit of research. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to, take time out of your day to go drive around on the weekend and find something.
Find things, right? Because it's not like they have it's not like you look in the sky and there's a beacon of an arrow pointing
this is
down,
here, this is
like
here.
a video game. Like
Right.
this is your destination. Like it doesn't work like that. Like you have to get out of your comfort zone and go do the things to find them. So
it's like you said, just make the most of where you're at, type thing.
where you're planted.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and you mentioned your husband and also just like trying to find those outlets. So you met him at.
Oh yeah, so that's awkward. So what had happened was I was in tech school, and I would occasionally like go back to the squad and just like poke my head in and be like, I'm still here, I'm alive, like I exist. And they'd be like, okay, Lieutenant Poole, go do your thing, go do the things. I'm like, okay. So I'd go hang out with my NCOs and stuff and see how they're doing, and hang out with the airmen and see what they're doing. I really, because the class would get out a little early, so I'd go back and hang out for an hour in the squadron and kind of poke around, and like I didn't want to like fade away, because I was gonna
go back
and come back, so might as well learn what I can, so that way when I come back I have some idea as to what's going on, right? So I'm walking around, and in the Sabbath building, which is this giant rectangular building that's shaped like an H on the inside, walking down the corridor, manpower's in there. Real talk, manpower folk are amazing. Like they're number one, they're awesome. Like as math geeks, like super awesome analysts. Had on Keesler one of the best snack bars. Like our manpower folks in the FSS, like they did not joke.
Checked it out.
They had an entire cubicle dedicated with a fridge, a microwave. Like
Pro tip if you end up at Keesler.
Yes, Sabbath buildings. They're in the second floor, but you got to buddy up with have an FSS, have a personnelist in your back pocket to show you.
Right.
Because that would be like where we'd get sodas. They had candy, they had granola bars, they had healthy options and stuff too. So I'm walking down this corridor. I'm like, I was walking toward my leadership office to kind of hassle the commanders. I'm here, like play with, like just hang, like hope you're doing well, and talk to the secretaries and stuff and see how they're doing. And Joe was walking opposite of me, and I hadn't seen a butter bar outside of myself on base. He was the first. I know it's like, oh, that's so cliche, love at first sight. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't. No offense, if Joe watches this, I'm sorry, but
I did not like you.
I did no. He's my husband. Like I'm all right, but he's okay. But so walking down the hall, and first lieutenant, I freaked out. I was like, oh my, and I'm like super socially awkward. So like I saw him like, oh my gosh, another second lieutenant, like out loud in the long, like this corridor echoes. And he stops and looks at me and he goes, yeah. And I'm like, hi, I'm Allie. Like
Yeah.
my nickname. Hi, I'm Allie. You know, nice to meet you. And we got to talking, and bless his heart, he. I was like, well, well, did you know we have a really good snack bar up here? And I took him to the Manpower snack bar. And no, I don't consider that a date because I was like fumbling my words. Like I was just excited to see another, LT, and went ahead and showed him that. And he goes, we got to talking, and he's like, are you permanent party or are you a tech schooler? Because there's a bunch of tech schools at Keesler, and there was rules in place, like if you're permanent party, tech schoolers, like you want to try, you don't want to interfere with their training and stuff, right? So I was like, oh well, I'm a tech schooler, but I'm stationed here at Keesler. I actually work downstairs in the NPF. And he's like, oh, you work in the NPF, the FSS. I'm in the comm squadron. So got to talking. So we were all in mission support, right, underneath that umbrella. And so I was like, cool, well, I hope you have a good rest of your class, take care of yourself. And we went our separate ways, and I was like, oh, he was nice, and went about my business. Come back, and from tech school, like in December, and I have an email from Lieutenant Vodo saying, hey, welcome to Keesler. Here's some information about the CGOC, Company Grade Officer Council. If you'd like to meet up for a coffee sometime and kind of go through the motions, go ahead and do so. And, it was nice meeting you. So I was like, cool, like, hit him back or whatever. We got to talking. And then by way of means, I got an extra ticket to The Force Awakens. And I was like, hey, man, I've got an extra ticket to The Force Awakens on opening night. Do you want to go? And he was like, explicit exploratory. Like, yes. The answer is yes. And then years later, we're married. So, like, that was, like,
nice.
our first date. Like, we went and saw Star Wars together. And then, so like I mentioned, we're big geeks at heart. So he's a big Warhammer 40K player.
Okay.
And I picked on him because it's like little plastic. If there's 40K players in the DET, like, they know it's an expensive hobby. It's imagine like StarCraft, but like you buy the models, you paint the models, and then you do like war games with them. And I was like, you spend how much? This is dumb. And he goes, let me show you the orc army. And I was like, I like orcs. That sounds fun. And then he roped me into it, and it was like, got him. Like I can't pick on him anymore because I enjoy the hobby with him. So. But yeah, that's how we met. So awkwardly met in a corridor, went and saw a Star Wars movie together, and then started dating. And the funny thing was, like, because he would come visit me, so where my office was behind the MPF. So like we had our workers and stuff like that, our airmen that did the thing, and then he would come behind the back and he'd be like, hey, you want to go get lunch? Like when we were dating, and he was like, yeah. And my NCOs and my airmen started picking up, like, ma'am, who's that? Who's that Lieutenant Vodo? And it's like blush, like, don't look at me, like, I just took a lunch. And they're like, I see you. I hear the wedding bells. Like, really, like, it was fun. So, yeah, it was a good time.
That's awesome. That's very sweet.
But that's like the part of why Keesler was so special. You know what I mean? Like, you build relationships. We were dating at the time, but you build those relationships and your friendships and stuff. So we'd have people come by and like a couple other LTs would come by and drop in and see how I'm doing, and then Aaron would be like, I've heard your name, like you belong to LRS and stuff. So making those connections,
social networking, and that kind of
because some LTs didn't have airmen underneath them, so like giving
lonely.
them, like they're like, hey, you're in charge of the shop, and it's you and a civilian airman that's been working this. Like you're gonna learn from that civilian airman and the 3 other folk that have been doing this for a decade or less or more, and that was what their job was like, and that was what my husband did. So he was in an office where he worked hand in hand with a bunch of civilian airmen, and the airmen that assisted with like tech tickets and stuff, like computers, separate flight. So I feel bad, like I keep giving long-winded responses, and I'm like
totally
looking
fine.
at the time. So
no, this is the perfect time. This is the DET 842 podcast.
I'll take it. I see another question. Let me see. I don't know.
Let me see if I can pull it up as well.
Yeah. I can't see. I'm not a Mac user, so.
Oh, it was Cadet Wilson. She said, "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your input and personal anecdotes."
Oh yeah, no worries.
Going back to that question that we were gonna save, we'll do it now. So, what is a normal day like for the average force support officer? And then I want to add a little twist. Does that differ from your lieutenant days to your captain days?
Yes, kind of. So let's start with typical day of an FSS officer. So we have a lot of different branches underneath us.
Mm-hmm.
Previously we had protocol, but I think since I've been in, they've opened that up to other career fields.
Uh-huh.
But you got to think like sustainment, community services, NPF, mortuary. No one FSS officer has had the same path, right? So our days are different. Our how we go about our business is different, right? Now, what I can tell you, I can give you my perspective and a hypothetical,
Uh-huh.
right? So my perspective is when I was an LT, I belonged to the NPF, so I helped out in that capacity, and I wake up, put on the uniform, get to work early. Always get to work early, like in my opinion. Like showing up on time is good, but like I like to get there 30 minutes before most folks
Everyone
show up.
else,
I get
right.
my coffee in my system. I open up my email. I make sure there's nothing on fire, and if there is something on fire, okay, this is how I'm going to tackle it through the day. So I'm not blindsided and trying to keep up with the chaos that comes later on throughout the day. So I feel that a typical day is, as a lieutenant, for me was going to meetings and being a fly on the wall, trying to get myself involved in opportunities where I could get some like sitting in on decision-making process meetings and stuff like that, and shadowing my NCOs and asking them, like, I was hungry, like I was like, what can I do? Can you give me something?
Right.
Like, what can I do to help you? What are you struggling with, and what can I learn from this? And sure enough, we were going through static closeout dates. Like I was in the NPF when that first hit. Like we were responsible for establishing the first promotion board for eligible tech sergeants, and like that was our big project. Is how are we going to roll this out for the base? And doing like it's going to sound crazy, but it varies. But hand in hand, it's really working with your NCOs and trying to find avenues. Hey, well, I need this information, but I don't know who to go to. Well, let me work through my network and see if there's anything I can find. I know a dude over in LRS that may have some insight, or I'll just ask around and see what I can do to help get that information. Or looking in the AFIs is, I know y'all probably do that as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the 36 series, that's us.
Right.
Like, hello, you're welcome. So
you're 36 2903.
Yeah, 362903, like
We spit you out all the time.
Yeah, so I've got that. I've got 36 3000, 3003. I believe that's leave, and then that's like my section commander days. But like, I always had like I was terrible at memorizing, so I had like a little sticky note on my computer. It was like 3003 leave. This. So I reference as I would need to, but going in and researching, like how do you interpret this? Like, how do you interpret this, ma'am? Because this is how I have it. So doing that, having those conversations and trying to figure out what's best. But more so, I feel that because I had airmen underneath me, the biggest thing that I wanted to learn is where do I fit in on their development? Like, because I understand that, your NCOs take care of the development, the care and well-being of the airmen. You're at a strategic level as the officer, right? But when you're a lieutenant, you want to understand
what they're doing,
their relationship.
Right.
Not even what they're doing, but the relationship between the NCO and the airman.
Okay.
So kind of taking a step back and kind of getting that perspective and asking questions to the NCO, like, hey, could you talk to me about, what does it mean to be an NCO?
Right.
Like, what is that? Because you'll learn as you go through your career. Like, they go to like ALS and they go to a lot of these professional development opportunities. So getting that insight. So what does taking care of an airman mean to you?
Right.
Like, and what can I do to take care of you, to take care of the airmen?
Right.
It's a trickle down effect. What can I do to take care of this organization so that way you can do your job and take care of the airmen? Or where can I step in to help with that?
Right.
You know what I mean? So typical day is just different. For me, it was learning as much as I can without stepping on any toes, and being very receptive to feedback, right?
Okay. Like you mentioned, getting sat down and talked to.
Yeah.
Right.
But people aren't going to just be like, well, I take that back, because Chief Moody was like, no, like, you're under my under my wing now. I was like, okay, like this is great, but not all folks are going to be like that. So you have to actively search for people that you can confide in.
Okay.
And that's the thing. Who can I confide confide in to give me good information. And I'm not saying that, there are folks out there that have bad information, right? But what I'm saying is, how can I build a relationship with someone to have that candid feedback on, ranks off, like,
right.
ma'am, like, let's talk about that decision and let's think about the repercussions that could happen because of it. Roger that, like, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, heard, and not noted in the sarcastic sense. It's like, heard that, noted.
Literally writing.
I am noting this, like, this conversation, so that way we can proceed. But really taking the time to learn it, because the MPF is such a fun and wild animal. Like, there are all the different regulations, all the different AFIs that fall underneath that bucket, on top of the influence that you have on the base level. You know what I mean? Because we had a $14,000 population, like customer population. Thinking retirees, you're thinking folks on the base, you're thinking about the guardsmen, the reservists that were there.
It's a lot of people.
A lot of people that we serviced. So we had a really big impact on a lot of different lives and a lot of different walks of life. So how we conduct business, thinking at that strategic level. So what can I do to take care of my airmen so they can take care of the customer? If I've got an airman that's going through a divorce, or if I've got an airman that's going through a bad breakup with their boyfriend or girlfriend, like, their attitude is going to, if they don't leave that at the door, or if they don't have that outlet to talk to someone, like, and I'm not saying you as the officer of that outlet,
right?
If the culture that you've established doesn't allow for that, or they don't have the resources that they need to go seek help, that attitude and that bitterness is going to bleed over. It's going to affect their work. It's going to affect how they interact with customers and stuff like that. So thinking strategically about the influence that your organization has, and then at your level, what can I do to provide resources to take care of my airmen? What can I do to take care of my airmen? And working with your NCOs to navigate that. I'll tell you straight up, I remember when I was a butter bar, one of the first experiences that I had in my calendar, because I didn't have a meeting, is I walked up to Airman Ball, and I was like, hey, can you show me what you do? And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she goes, yeah, I'm just updating things in MilPDS. I'm like, cool, so what does that mean? Like, I don't understand what MilPDS is. What is that?
Right.
And she took the time, and she's like, you're one of the first O's that have sat down and really talked to me, like, showed interest in what I do, because it's it can get very monotonous. Like, go in, update these codes, update this information. You don't really feel, because I've been there, like, you don't feel what you're doing is impactful. But when someone comes in out of nowhere and is like, no, that's really cool. Like, what do you mean? Like, you mean that's gonna help them? That duty that you're changing this to make them more, like, you're putting an EPR back in their records, or putting an OPR back in their records. Like, that's impactful. Like, they're gonna be aboard one day. So kind of taking the time to get to know your folks. Like, for me, that was a very average thing that I would do. And average in the sense of more often I would do that versus being at the table saying, and this shall be the decision.
Like, do this type of thing.
Yeah. That comes later when you're like a captain and stuff like that, or even a senior.
But being, like, genuine with them, not doing it to say that you're doing it. Like, I'm getting to know my people. Like, I'm asking them the typical questions, like small talk, but, like, actually getting involved and.
You have to feel that you have to feel care. You have to want to learn, because people are going to see through it, right? If I came in here and I was like, cool, we're doing an interview, what do you got? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to, like, the connections that you build and the conversations and your tone and how you interact with people, like, that goes a very long way. Like, and mind you, there are some folks that are more stoic, which is fine. Like, and that's their leadership style. Each of us have a different leadership style. But that's fine. But taking the time, like, hey, can you show me what you do and how we can go about this? So, and what resources don't you have? Like, what do you need help with? Why is this difficult for you? And asking those questions, those probing questions on why is this difficult? Because they'll be like, man, this sucks. Like, why is that? Like, what makes it difficult for you and stuff? And they'll be like, well, if this could be automated or something like that, it would make my life a lot easier. It's like, cool, like, let's see what we could do to try and get that fixed, But yeah, that's another long-winded, sorry.
No problem, ma'am, no problem.
I don't know how to work a Mac, so let me look at my watch. I feel bad, because is it already almost been an hour?
It has, it's been 55 minutes.
Oh no, Oh, okay.
Time
Sorry.
flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
No, but that's all really good stuff, and I think that covers most of the like real life military stuff that we wanted to talk about. But we do have a section that you can see there highlighted.
Yeah.
We'll rapid fire like some personal stuff, right?
Oh man.
You mentioned comic books,
Yes.
Warhammer with your husband,
Yes.
Star Wars,
Yes.
right? So what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
Oh, why would you do that? I honestly, I feel that we watched A New Hope the other
Okay.
night, like, and there's just something nostalgic about seeing the roots and going back to the beginning of the franchise.
Right.
And I have to say, A New Hope kind of itches that scratch for me.
Right.
Now, obviously, with the Mandalorian and stuff like that, like, I mean, I very much enjoyed that series and whatnot. So, but if movie wise,
Right.
I feel that A New Hope really did it for me.
But then content wise, Mandalorian
Yeah,
is your go-to.
I think content wise, like, I love the story of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think-
and I feel that, you know, they kind of bringing Ahsoka online and opening up a whole nother avenue to, you know, alluding to Thrawn and stuff like that. Like a whole nother, there's a lot more brewing that
Right.
it excites me. Because, I mean, we've seen it in Rebels, we've seen it in Clone Wars
Right.
and stuff like that. So it excites me to see that there's more to come. Like they're constantly developing
Right.
new content that not only does it balance pleasing the old folks, like I don't mean old like age wise.
Right.
I don't mean old age wise, but like the old time folks, like the people that really are like true to the original three, and the books and the true lore. Like there's an RPG, like
Yeah, and then but also like bringing in the new
but
newer
catering to the
generation
new
and
crowd.
right.
Yeah, bringing in the new generation.
Right.
I think that I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Will it be good? Who knows? Like they did
We'll
well,
see.
in my opinion. They did
Right.
well by the Mandalorian, but you know, I know the season finale. Like my husband and I were like,
Wow.
like we were screaming in the
Yeah.
house. Our dogs were like, nope, and like left. They're like nerds, geeks.
On that note, so we got favorite movie, favorite content for like the Star Wars. Do you have a favorite like game, board game, video game, that kind of stuff?
Oh man, so video game. I know it's gotten a lot of flack. I've really enjoyed Cyberpunk. So Cyberpunk 2077, I very much enjoyed that. But if I go to like an old time game, I grew up playing like Baldur's Gate. So Baldur's Gate 3, which is coming out, is something I'm very excited for. But on that note with Baldur's Gate, so I'm a huge fan of D&D. Like I absolutely love Dungeons and Dragons. Like I've been reading the books. Like my dad would print out the monster manual in black and white, and I would color them in with crayon. Like
Wow,
like
it goes back to the roots.
Yeah, like so it's really cool, and I've got a really good D&D group here in San Antonio. Like every Sunday, that's our thing. Like, regardless of like my school and PhD stuff, like that's your thing. That is Sunday is dedicated to Dungeons and Dragons.
We had something like that too. Our freshman and sophomore year, am I correct? Yeah, we had. Is it still going?
We have all the books and everything to set everything up. I'm just waiting for the players to come back so we can resume our campaign.
Right. Yeah, we had one started, and then we had a lot of people in there for a minute, and then I guess we all just got busy, POC jobs and all that, school life, that kind of stuff. So hopefully we can get that back online.
Yeah,
Seems
I love
pretty
it,
cool.
man.
Right.
It's my jam.
Yeah.
Those
Those are
gnome wizard.
Oh,
Nate
nice.
Meeks. She's a diplomat, so she's like a linguist, but she throws spells like I love her. She's great.
Nice.
She's my nerd. Like I get it.
Yeah. I wanted to really hit that section because I know you're super passionate about that.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned the tattoos, I think.
Oh
right?
god,
The
yeah.
Sleeve of.
It's it's a bad hobby. Like, but I've got Pokemon. It's bad.
Right.
Like I love them. Don't get me wrong. I don't regret my tattoos at all.
Right.
Oh, signaling. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But I think for you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to just take a second to thank you. Like this has been an awesome opportunity, and I know I kind of was long-winded and a lot of
No
questions.
problem with
I don't
that,
know if
man.
you have any other questions in the crowd.
I don't think so.
That I wasn't able to get to.
Nothing that I see. And if we do, I can go ahead and follow up with you.
Yeah,
We can
for
maybe
sure.
bring you back on type of thing, or in our next podcast mention the answers that you had for
sure.
those questions.
I would say that expect the unexpected. You know, as you go through your careers and as you become lieutenants and stuff like that, and captains and whatever you choose to do, expect the unexpected. And as the saying goes, you know, bloom where you're planted. I didn't expect myself to be here, going back to school to get a PhD. Like seven years ago. I can't do math. Math is hard. Math majors and simple math is hard.
Something about it.
Fingers. But my biggest piece of advice to you and to those listening in, be transparent and empower people. Be transparent with your expectations and your goals, and encourage people to do the same, so that way it's synchronistic. Like, let me help you get what you need, and then you hope that in return they're going to help you get to where you
they
need
have
to
your
be.
back.
I wouldn't be here and I'll say it again, I wouldn't be here had it not been for folks like Jen Suarez, Tia Robles, Matt Smith. I look at folks like Heather Moody, Krista Knaus, all my NCOs and everybody. I look at my gig as a section commander, Colonel Wilson, all the commanders that were there that really supported and took care of me, and Colonel Trayleak and stuff, and had that support, and that they saw I was transparent with them on what I was hoping to do in my life, and worked hard for them and cared about the organization that they represented and that they ran, and in return, they took care of me at that level. And my airmen took care of me by kicking butt at their jobs, because you take ownership for the things that we fail on, but doing so, you learn, you fail forward and you learn with your team, and you find ways to make things better, right? So transparency and empowerment, man. Like, biggest piece of advice for you and the other road runners out there, like, and have fun. Don't take don't take yourself too seriously when you don't have to. Like, there's discipline, there's time and place for discipline, like being stoic.
Being locked on.
Have fun
Awesome.
with it.
Well, thank you for that. I know you said you were thanking us, but thank you for coming on and coming back and sharing some of your experiences, the personal life, and the big military hoorah stuff that we like to talk about.
Fun. It's good. Hang in there.
Right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir.
To our listeners and watchers, thank you for coming on to another week. We'll have another podcast next week, I think. So even with spring break, you can look forward to that. We've got more guests, like we mentioned, coming on every week. So look forward to that.
Oh, here's a pro tip: DDSS. Don't do stupid stuff. Don't get arrested, and don't do dumb things.
Yeah,
like,
especially over the break, especially over spring break.
DDSS. Don't do stupid stuff. My airmen say DDSS, but there's an explicit expletive at the end of it. But we'll just say stuff.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for coming in, and we'll see you next week.